and welcome viewers. I am Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. China has staged its largest ever military parade in Beijing's Tiananmen Square to mark 80 years since the end of the Second World War, with President Xi Jinping declaring that the world faces a choice between peace or war. Other leaders, including Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, joined the parade. US President Donald Trump has slammed Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un on Truth Social, warning of a conspiracy against the United States. He's also honored Americans who died supporting Chinese victory, hoping that their sacrifices are remembered. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has condemned Russia's drone attacks and Moscow's statements from China, accusing Putin of spreading false narratives and denying responsibility for the war. He has stated that Putin is defying global efforts and Donald Trump's calls for a trilateral meeting to end the conflict. Trump has stated that he is monitoring the Russia-Ukraine war after 7,313 casualties had occurred last week. He has expressed hope for an end for hostilities. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has called Putin a major war criminal and has emphasized the need for a ceasefire, also advocating for economic measures to undermine Russia's war economy. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has praised IDF soldiers and reservists for their sacrifices, acknowledging the difficult decisions made during the war against Hamas. He has affirmed Israel's success, stating that the Iranian axis, Hezbollah and Houthis are declaring the nation enters a decisive phase towards total victory. US President Donald Trump condemns high violence in Chicago, Los Angeles and Baltimore, claiming local governors for failing to control crime. He stated that he plans to send federal support to Chicago but did not specify when action will be taken. US President Donald Trump has authorized a lethal strike on a vessel carrying drugs from Venezuela, killing 11 people. The attack was targeting cartels threatening the United States and the Caribbean region. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has confirmed continued counter-drug operations. A bomb blast has killed at least 11 people and injured 30 others at a rally in Quetta in southwestern Pakistan, commemorating leader Sadr Ataullah Mengal. Now, authorities say it appears to be a suicide attack with investigations underway and no group claiming responsibility. Well, viewers, those were the headlines and our top focus, what is happening in China. Chinese President Xi Jinping has declared that the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation is unstoppable as he opened a massive military parade marking 80 years since the end of the Second World War. With Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korea's Kim Jong-un at his side, Xi warned the world is again at a crossroads between peace and war and dialogue or confrontation. Calling for global unity, Xi has urged nations to treat each other as equals and eliminate the root causes of conflict. Listen in.
今天我们隆重集会 纪念中国人民抗日战争及世界反法西斯战争胜利80周年，共同铭记历史，缅怀先烈，珍爱和平，开创未来。中国人民抗日战争是世界反法西斯战争的重要组成部分。 中国人民以巨大的民族牺牲，为拯救人类文明、保卫世界和平，做出了重大贡献。
Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has reacted rather sharply, accusing Xi, Putin and Kim of conspiring against the United States of America. The display of unity between the three leaders comes at a time of rising global tensions and shifting power dynamics. Joining us on the broadcast is Mr. Ross Feingold. He's a political analyst from Taipei in Taiwan. Thank you for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. It has been 80 years since the Second World War ended. However, we've seen that there's a battle over narratives that is now taking place. So China and Taiwan especially continue this battle over who did what during the deadly war. They're still fighting to claim credit for victory. So do you think what we're seeing, this grand military parade by Xi Jinping, is an attempt to popularize the CCP's narrative?
Of course, the CCP wants the world to know that it played a key role in defeating the Japanese occupation of Japan during World War II. Certainly they did play a role, but the main role was the military of the Republic of China, which after World War II lost the Civil War and had to move its government here to Taiwan. So both have the claim to fighting off the Japanese invasion, but they get into debates about who did more. But the reality is that the CCP won the Civil War that ended in 1949. And as I said, the government of the Republic of China retreated here to Taiwan. And China's become an economic and military power. So, of course, they have more ability to try to control that narrative.
Indeed. And what do you make of Trump's fresh claims regarding a conspiracy against the United States of America? Because on one hand, we do know for a fact that China has its own ambitions of becoming the global hegemon. In fact, Trump was shaking hands with Putin a while back in Alaska. He also expressed his desire to meet Kim Jong-un again while interacting with the South Korean president at the Oval Office in Washington, D.C. And on the other, we're seeing Trump practically alienating its partners in the Indo-Pacific by slapping steep tariffs.
Maybe Trump wishes he was there. If he was there in person, he probably would be extremely friendly to these other leaders and wouldn't be making these kinds of remarks. But he's not there, and he's using his favorite platform of social media to make commentary. But you make a fair point that not only has he met Putin in person recently, but he said that he's willing to meet Kim Jong-un. And whenever the topic of Xi Jinping comes up, Trump actually says that we're very good friends. I get along very well with Xi Jinping. So I wouldn't read too much into this. It's just Trump using his social media in his usual style. But I don't think that this parade or Trump's reaction to it has any effect whatsoever on the ability of President Trump to interact with these leaders going forward, should President Trump choose to do so.
I'd like to thank you for joining us on the broadcast this morning, sharing your perspective on what is transpiring in China. You are shifting focus to more news coming in. We're now learning that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has criticized Russia's disregard for global peace efforts. He has accused Vladimir Putin of denying responsibility for the war. He was speaking after Putin told the SCO summit leaders that a conflict commenced with a coup in Ukraine. This is what Putin had claimed earlier. Zelensky has now stated that Putin continues to tell his tales and refuses to be forced into peace. Zelensky has also warned of new Russian troop buildups, especially along the front, and ongoing strikes on Ukrainian targets, vowing a response. Listen in to what he had to say.
Фактично, групи російських дронів у нашому небі – акомпанемент російським заявам з Китаю. Відверта зневага Росії до усього, що світ робить заради припинення війни. Вчора росіяни буквально заперечували те, що говорив президент Трамп, про зустріч лідерів, яка потрібна, щоб закінчити війну. Цими днями в Китаї Путін продовжує розказувати свої байки, начебто він у війні невинний, іначе його хтось завжди примушує воювати, вбивати, заганяти дітей в укриття, посилати тисячі людей на штурми. І зараз бачимо чергові накопичення російських сил на деяких ділянках фронту, от тільки до миру він ніяк примушуватись не хоче. Росія продовжує завдавати ударів. Звісно, ми будемо відповідати на це. Відповідати в тому числі асиметрично, щоб Росія точно відчувала наслідки своєї наглості. І ми продовжуємо працювати з партнерами заради тиску на Росію. Це буде. Нічого, крім сили, Росія не чує і брехатиме, поки не буде достатньо сильних її втрат.
Meanwhile, in Lviv, former Ukrainian Parliament Speaker Andrei Paryubiev was shot dead. He was a man charged with in the killing, admitted to guilt, but claimed that it was personal revenge, not Russian-backed. Zelensky, meanwhile, condemned the killing as a horrific murder, with top security officials leading the investigation. More details are yet to come to the fore. With us on the broadcast is Shruti Dasgupta, international affairs expert, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. The war is not abating. We've seen drone strikes take place in Russia yesterday, and before that we've seen similar such strikes take place in Kiev. It's innocent civilians who are now losing their lives. That's not all. A lot of energy infrastructure has also been targeted, yet the Kremlin has given no indication of coming to the negotiating table. What's really needed at this hour? Do you think it's important for European leaders to outline security guarantees for Ukraine?
Good morning, Pia. Thank you for inviting me to your show. The European leaders need to come to an understanding that they cannot push Putin to the table, and they cannot put blanket assumptions on security guarantees that they would be able to enjoy if US was backing the peace. This is not a US-driven narrative. This is a Russia-driven narrative, and Russia will control how and when the peace is brokered. If undue pressure is applied, Ukraine may end up losing a larger section of land and resources than they would have if they agree to Putin's term. So right now we can see a large, about 20% of the land is already under the Russian occupation, which is also counting Crimea as of now. So these particular stances, the exchange of ammunition is showing that this is just fueling the war machinery and the arms lobbies across the world. It is not leading to peace. So EU needs to stop funding the war. US needs to stop sending equipment, and Zelensky needs to understand that he does not have much say except for noise in the stake of the game between Ukraine and Russia.
Towards another crucial development that has taken place yesterday. Even as the war is underway, Russia and China are deepening energy cooperation. Both countries have inked an agreement to construct the Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline through Mongolia, which is marking a deepening of their strategic energy partnership. We've seen the optics of what's taken place at the SCO summit. Oftentimes, critics of Putin have stated that he's been isolated because of this war. But now we're seeing that something entirely opposite has taken place at the SCO. Would you concur?
I do concur. Putin's red carpet actually, in fact, rolled out when Trump welcomed him in Alaska. And from there on, it was open stage to anybody. Although towards, if you look at the Eurasian element, where Asia also plays a factor, Putin was never a persona non grata. He was always welcomed with open arms and with anticipation of better deals, especially since Russia holds a large amount of energy resources in its hands. So I would love to see what Trump is going to do next after this declaration of an energy cooperation between his two not so good friends after he has tariffed India on buying Russian oil. Now, I would like to see how he will respond to what China is going to be doing and how he will control the war narrative by saying that these people are not good people, and maybe we'll see a few more sanctions roll out, a lot of bluster. But ultimately, it is going to come down whether you are level-headed enough to understand that Putin's path to peace comes through power, and that is why the entire exchange of fire is continuing across Ukraine. it doesn't stop. In fact, every time they talk of peace, every time Putin is asked to explain himself and his stance, it becomes more and more aggressive. We are looking at the section, the 20% that is held by Russian forces right now, is the larger section, which is a Russian-speaking section. He's already declared two independent nations there, the Republic of Luhansk, the Republic of Donetsk. So he is making sure that it doesn't get credited that maybe he's reliving the USSR dreams. No, he's making sure that regions come out of the Western influence, which are of importance to Russia. So for the West, they're losing the eastmost corner of Eurasia if Russia succeeds in ensuring that the peace agreements or armistice of any sort includes the independence of these particular regions. If we go a level further, this is also an ethnic clash where the Anglo-Saxons versus the Slavs kind of a narrative is built, where they always seem to assume that the Slavs, which are the Russians and the Belarusians and the others, are lesser important than the Germans and the English and the French. So this is an ethnic level clash also. That is why Europe is finding it a little difficult to swallow down the peace agreement that Putin is dictating. And if I take it on to a further level, there was a small blip. I do not know if any of your other analysts or myself have covered it before, but this is also an interaction between the kind of Christianity that is practiced in these regions, the Orthodox Christian versus the Catholic, the Protestant Pope. So you have to understand that the Roman Church is now trying to control the narrative, which is not really happening. There was a meeting between the Pope and the Archbishop of the Orthodox Christian Church. So there is multi-level aggression that is part of this particular war and the war fronts, not just geopolitically, but ethnically and also religiously. The Minsk agreements that were thrown out of the window, the 2022 peace agreements that were thrown out of the window, they showed that the Europe actually thought they would be able to control a larger part of the conversation on this. They wanted their forces there. NATO was very adamant about it. And as of now, Trump is only fueling his own cronies. We've heard a news bite where 10% of whatever money is made through selling arms paid by the Europe is going directly into Trump's pockets. So we understand that peace may not be something that Trump wants. Europe needs it, otherwise they're going to have a full-fledged war. We've already heard about how France is trying to engage more forces. They're telling their people to get ready for war. And Germany is already doing that. And for the very first time, they've started conscriptions again. So it's something that we need to consider, that if they do not agree to what Putin wants, they will have a full-scale war on their hands.
To stay on with us as we shift our focus away from the Russia-Ukraine war towards what's happening in the Middle East. Israel is now ramping up its military offensive in Gaza. In fact, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has stated that the conflict is now at a decisive stage. He has vowed that what began in Gaza will end in Gaza. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of reservists are reporting for duty, with a new operation to capture Gaza City now underway. Israeli army radio states that 40,000 reservists were called up. Netanyahu, meanwhile, claims major strategic gains, including a weakened Iran, Hezbollah, as well as the Assad regime being completely overthrown, and a weakened Houthi group as well. Listen in to what he had to say.
אני רוצה לחזק ולהביע הערכה עמוקה לכם, חיילי צה"ל וחיילי המילואים והמשפחות שלכם. אני יודע ששילמתם מחיר יקר, גם בעבודה, גם בלימודים, גם בבית. אנחנו פועלים להכריע את החמאס, אבל בדרך חוללנו יחד נפלאות, כי שברנו את הציר האיראני. גם בעזה, גם בלבנון עם החיזבאללה, גם עם משטר אסד שהתמוטט, גם עם איראן עצמה, שאימה עלינו איומים קיימים, והסרנו אותם יחד, ועכשיו גם מול החות'ים. אבל מה שהתחיל בעזה, חייב להסתיים בעזה. חיילי צה"ל היקרים, סדיר ומילואים. לכל אורך המלחמה, אנחנו קיבלנו החלטות קשות מאוד. החלטות שאיש לא האמין שנוכל באמת ליישם אותן. אבל יישמנו אותן, משום שאתם נתתם לנו ולי את הכוח לקדם את מדינת ישראל לקראת ניצחון גורף. ועכשיו אנחנו עומדים בפני שלב ההכרעה. אני מאמין בכם, אני סומך עליכם, וכל העם מחבק את חיילי צה"ל היקרים, סדיר ומילואים. לכל אורך המלחמה, אנחנו קיבלנו החלטות קשות מאוד. החלטות שאיש לא האמין שנוכל באמת ליישם אותן. אבל יישמנו אותן, משום שאתם נתתם לנו ולי את הכוח לקדם את מדינת ישראל לקראת ניצחון גורף. ועכשיו אנחנו עומדים בפני שלב.
Meanwhile, the offensive is drawing international concern. Palestinian officials have stated that at least 100 people were killed in Israeli strikes today, 35 of whom were in Gaza City alone. French President Emmanuel Macron has stated that Israel's military actions will not stop the global push to recognize a Palestinian state. In fact, France and Belgium plan to raise the issue at the upcoming UN General Assembly despite resistance and pressure being pushed by the United States of America. Ms. Shruti Dasgupta still with us on the broadcast. Ma'am, I'd like to ask you, what are the chances of this UNGA resolution being accepted, and how much weight does it hold, considering that it is the UNSC, which is the body that truly holds the power to make decisions that influence the course of the war?
Well, it does hold a little bit of water, at least in terms of optics. It allows the global stage to kind of come forth and show their support for Palestine, and also show that while Israel is winning the war on ground and it is losing the narrative war, and it does not look good for it. It is no longer able to justify its actions on the ground, and neither will its supporters like the US and the other nations be able to condone its excessive use of military force. Inside the Israeli group, they have divided views about this. The General Zamir himself has come up and said the IDF wants to take on the peace deal that is being offered up on the table, which the Hamas has agreed to. But Netanyahu government has stood firmly and said they want complete control of the narrative. They want all the hostages back, not a piece-by-piece deal. They want all the hostages back and a complete demilitarization of Hamas. And they have presented it as the last stage of their existential crisis. If they do this, if they accept the peace deal, then they would be, they would be allowing their aggressors a victory. And that is how Netanyahu wants to look at this particular peace deal that is being brokered, which the IDF says they want to accept, because IDF is not equipped to deal with such a long, prolonged, war machinery. They have retained the extra 20,000 conscripts, their reservist forces. They've been at war for a very long time, which was not the deal, which is not Israel as such. And people want peace. Even a sliver of hope will help them. And this is not something that Netanyahu is looking at. And so it's difficult for him to justify his actions to his own people, to the people that are supporting him, like the US. Trump himself has given a statement that is no longer looking good for Israel, their continued aggression. They already control 75% of Gaza Strip. Now the last 25% is under aggression, and they're making headway every day, and also collecting a large amount of bad press as well as ill hope in terms of global forces. So when France says that it's not going to change its stance, when the UNSC peace forces are the true forces, they might be used to kind of control the narrative now. And once that kind of a resolution is passed and accepted in Palestine, although I might say the etymology of the word itself comes from the Arabic word Philistine, which comes from the Hebrew word Philistim, which means infiltrators. So the farce of the Palestinian identity gets its global recognition. And after that, it is just a short pause where UNSC starts deploying forces to control the aggression that comes under the name of Operation Gradient Sharet 2.
All right, ma'am, with that, I would like to thank you for taking our time, joining us on NewsX World as we discuss what is transpiring between Russia and Ukraine, as well as what's happening in the Middle East. Meanwhile, viewers, shifting focus to what's happening within the United States of America, US President Donald Trump has stated that he would deploy National Guard troops to fight crime in Chicago. This is an attempt to turn the nation's third largest city into a militarized zone, according to critics. It is likely to spark a legal showdown with local authorities. Let's in fact hear what the US president had to say.
Going in. I didn't say when we're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation. When we lose, when 20 people are killed over the last 2.5 weeks and 75 are shot with bullets.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has now slammed President Trump's plan to deploy the National Guard to Chicago and stated that the city does not want troops on their streets. He has added that none of this is about fighting crime or making Chicago safer. The Democratic governor told reporters that for Trump, this is about testing his power and producing a political drama to cover up for his alleged corruption. Meanwhile, California Governor Gavin Newsom's press office has made a post on X by filing a preliminary injunction asking the court to stop the extension of these soldiers' deployment in LA through November 5. A federal judge halted President Trump's administration from deploying the military to combat crime in California, while the Republican president did threaten to send troops to additional U.S. cities, including Chicago. U.S. District Judge Charles Breyer has ruled that the Trump administration deliberately violated the Comitatus Act by deploying troops for crowd control and supporting immigration and drug raids. In June, there were about 4,000 National Guard members and 700 Marines who were sent to Los Angeles. There was a legal showdown over this that had transpired earlier, and now it seems likely that one will also take place over what's happening in Chicago and Trump's intents as far as Chicago is concerned. With us on the broadcast is Professor Madhav Nalapath. He is the editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you for taking our time speaking to NewsX World. Trump, in his soundbite that we just heard, has said that his intent to deploy the National Guard in Chicago is not a political thing. So is this a genuine bid to tackle crime or a show of strength to reinforce the MAGA voter base's support?
Well, the fact is that it is political, and the reality is that the people who have the most experience on the ground are the Chicago police, and they're not going to take kindly to National Guards coming in and basically taking over their responsibilities. My worry is that the National Guard, I mean, they're not really equipped for this kind of civil, what do I say, civil protests. They're equipped for civil unrest on a massive scale. And the entire training is for civil unrest on a massive scale, not for civil protests. So my worry is, frankly, this itself is now causing a lot of the streets to have large demonstrations against this kind of thing. Then you have counter demonstrations in favor, and there's a risk that these will turn violent. And if the National Guard opens fire and several people are killed or injured, that's going to look very, very bad. And frankly, it's going to be very bad news for the people of Chicago and also for President Trump. So my own view is that I think he should understand that the United States is a federal union, and as a consequence, what is needed is to consult with the local government and the local police and get their cooperation and support before deploying the National Guard, because the police have first-hand knowledge of every precinct, of every street corner. And yes, some of them could have done a better job, but the fact is that the National Guard are completely clueless about these kind of situations. And I'm afraid that this might trigger some kind of an unfortunate incident involving shooting by National Guard, and that is going to be very, very unfortunate.
All right, so I request you to stay on with us as we track further developments. We're shifting our focus away from the United States of America to what's happening in South Asia. We're learning that the death toll in the devastating 6.0 magnitude quake in Afghanistan has risen to 1,411. Meanwhile, 3,124 people have been reported injured. Kunar province is the hardest hit, with more than 5,000 homes destroyed. The Taliban government has called the situation catastrophic and has urgently appealed for international aid, stating that it lacks the resources to respond to one of the deadliest earthquakes in recent years. Meanwhile, the Chinese embassy in Kabul has announced that it has sent emergency relief supplies to support the disaster response. India too has transported grain and other emergency medical supplies in order to ensure that there is relief aid available to the people who are suffering. Rescue teams continue searching remote mountainous areas with fears that the death toll could continue to rise, especially since access to these remote areas has been cut off by the roads being blocked. Listen in to some of the survivors.
د دینه دا 2 کاله مخکې یو زلزله شوی و کورونه ولیدل خو شهیدان نه شوی لکه چند کورونه ولیدل دا د زلزله شوی راشي دا په تاریخ کې مونږ نه لیدل خپل تاسو نه د تیاری راځي او کته کې او د زخمیان او د مړي جګي او که تاسو د ادرې طرف ته لاړ او تاسو د تازه قبرونه ویل د ماشومان او د غټانو خپل به تاسو وینئ
بیا بل بیګاره چې کوم ځای دین کې وشول زلزله شو دا غون کله دغه شش سرکته کنه پورته شو زمونږ مینه خو به د سټ نه وخت دلو خبره خراب شو ځکه زموږ دی وطن کې پراتم دغه زموږ د قیوه مینه او نور زموږ شي نشته یو د خدای نوم لرو او یو زمي دغه زمي مزدوري کوي یا لسه پیراوړي یا شل پیراوړي ما خورو پراته د خدای درګه ته پراته
شهیدان دي او درې زخمیان دي ټول کور چپا شوی دی په دیبل مخ شوی دی.
All right, viewers, shifting focus away from Afghanistan. News coming in from Pakistan. A bomb blast has killed at least 11 people and injured 30 others at a public rally. The rally was held in the southwestern Pakistani city of Quetta to commemorate the death anniversary of Sardar Ataullah Mengal, who was a former provincial chief minister. Government officials and the Balochistan National Party officials have stated that the bomb went off in a parking area as people were leaving the rally. Listen in as a party official describes the moment of the blast.
हमारे जलसा इख्तिताम पजीर हुआ उस वक्त जो मेहमान आए थे दूसरी पार्टियों के उनको हमने रुखसत किया वो निकल गए और सरदार साहब भी उसके साथ निकल गए तो ये सारे बाकी लोग निकल रहे थे तो गेट से मेन जो गेट है इससे थोड़े फासले पे ये धमाका हुआ.
Meanwhile, eyewitnesses informed that victims were rushed to the hospital within moments of the explosion. Listen in as an eyewitness describes the moment he saw flames rising from the blast site.
उस टाइम हम थोड़ी से फासले पे थे जैसे ही धमाका हुआ तो हम पीछे देखे आग के शोले ऊपर उठ रहे थे तो हम वापस पीछे गए वहाँ पे देखे काफ़ी लोग ज़ख्मी पड़े हुए थे और कुछ ऐसे ही गिरे हुए थे शहीद हुए थे उस टाइम तो उसी टाइम हम लोगों ने जल्दी से बंदूक उठा के सेवर की तरफ रवाना हुए.
Police officials in Pakistan state that the blast appears to be a suicide bombing. Meanwhile, another blast has taken place in Balochistan near the border with Iran, which has claimed 5 lives. Remember, Quetta is the capital of the Balochistan province, which borders Iran and Afghanistan. We do know that there are groups that are operating in this region that have expressed their aspiration for independence, but so far no one has claimed responsibility for the attacks. The blasts are now being investigated. With us on the broadcast is Professor Madhav Nalapat, Editorial Director of the Sunday Guardian. So 2 blasts have taken place in Balochistan. We've seen in the near past the Trump administration declaring the BLA as a terrorist organization. The BLA has claimed responsibility for several such similar attacks in the past, the frequency of which we've seen increasing. What do you make of these fresh blasts that have taken place? Is this indicative that the aspirations of the people on ground in Balochistan for their independence has not been snuffed?
Well, there's no doubt that their aspirations have not been met. In fact, Balochistan is a province where there are immense riches, mineral and human, and quite frankly, those riches are not really tapped properly. And what the Pakistan Army has done is to give the Chinese a license to operate in these areas. And as a consequence, what happens is that the Chinese personnel come to work on the projects, and the money flows to China, and some of it to the Pakistan army. Very little of it reaches the Baloch people, I mean, who are basically working in a menial capacity in any of these projects. So obviously they're very upset, and I think it's only fair that Balochistan get its fair share of the mineral resources it has. I mean, the crumbs that are being given to it are completely insufficient, and the Baloch people naturally are unhappy about this, and they are reacting, I mean, including in this suicidal manner. So, of course, violence in any form is to be deplored, but the reality on the ground is that the Baloch people are extremely frustrated and angry with the control of the Pakistan military and with the exploitation of their resources, not only by the Pakistan military, but also now by China.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World today as we track these very crucial developments. Due to paucity of time, we must wrap up this bulletin here. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned.